Super Mario Bros. 3. New different worlds, new exciting levels, new challenges galore. And welcome to Nostalgia, a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America. I'm Mike.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Joe.
Guys, it seems crazy to say, but when we pitched the idea of this podcast and we're talking about NES games, I think there's one game everybody's familiar with, and that's Super Mario Bros. 1. Okay. I guess I could agree with that one too. We've talked about Color a Dinosaur enough now that it's in, like the public lexicon.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it a lot.
But that was us.
But also Super Mario Brothers 1, like that is the highest selling video game for the NES because it was bundled with the console and everything. So as such, like just to tie it back into the game we're talking about today, like Super Mario Brothers 2, Super Mario Brothers 3, like these are all like this is a big trilogy, probably the NES's biggest trilogy, probably one of the biggest trilogies of all time, because Super Mario Brothers 2 wasn't really like it wasn't the same game as Super Mario Brothers 1, and I think we all appreciated that and liked it, and we voted it on the Essential Games list, but people were expecting maybe what Super Mario Brothers 3 brings to the table, but I don't even think they were expecting this much. This is a massive game. We are going to be talking for a long time. We have dedicated the entire night to talk about this game, so we will be using it, and I just feel like there's a lot of excitement about getting to this episode in particular. Like, it's the kind of thing you say, oh, that's going to be so far away, and now we're here.
I've been waiting for it since day one. I mean, like, this is, and like, I didn't know when you first, like, pitched the idea of doing this podcast that it would take us, 4 years to get here, but, like, I can't believe we're already doing it.
Yeah, I thought we'd do them all in like a Super Mario All-Stars episode, but I'm not disappointed at where we're at.
Well, when we get to the Super Mario All-Stars episode, you'll know that we've gone too far. That will have been past the NES's lifespan. Technically, not really. I mean, if we start like 1991's right around the corner when the Super Nintendo released in North America, but no plans to cover those games.
Yeah,
Instead,
that was a joke.
Right. We're just talking about Super Mario Brothers 3. And that leads me to my next point that I'll pitch to both you guys is, what can you say about Super Mario Brothers 3 that hasn't been said already? There's probably thousands of hours of YouTube essays on this game, and written game magazines have talked about this game for so long as one of the greatest games of all time. Some people will tell you it is the greatest game of all time. I don't know, like, it's one of those games that people wouldn't even necessarily disagree with people who have that opinion, right? Like, it's that uncontroversial to say that this is a good game that even if you don't think it's like your personal favorite game, you wouldn't like fight people who say it's a good game. It's like that kind of public knowledge.
Yeah, it's enough of a consensus. It's like saying that The Godfather is classic, or that Citizen Kane is classic, or that the Beatles are good. It's sort of passé at this point that this is a good game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because this one it's going to sound cliche, but it's so timeless. And I feel like we've said that about other NES games, and there have been some NES games that were like really popular, and we're like, it hasn't aged so well. But even the other games that we've said are timeless are not this timeless. Like, this is, for me, the first game on the NES that I've played that actually legitimately feels totally modern. Like I that might be like a kind of a crazy take, but like I think that it's just like I would believe if you put this in front of me and said that this was made today, I would believe it, other than like some of the obvious like visual cues that it was made on the NES.
Joe, you bring up a great point, because realistically, Super Mario Bros. 3 is such a giant push forward from the Super Mario Brothers 1 formula that, like, what have the new Super Mario Brothers games, not the 3D star collecting ones, but just the ones that follow this format, what have they really introduced that have changed Super Mario Brothers enough in the way that Super Mario Brothers 3 has, other than just introducing new power-ups.
Are you gonna talk shit about Super Mario World right now?
Well, hold on a minute. That's a good question, though, Sean, right? Like, there are people who are Super Mario World or Super Mario Brothers 3, and I think that that's really sad, that people would have to pit two amazing games against each other. Like, they're not different enough that it's not worth a discussion, but it's also like, both games can be on your greatest of all times list and totally be valid.
For sure. I mean, I definitely still have a preference if we want to talk about the difference, and my preference is definitely this game. Granted, now I'm going to be honest, this is the first video game I ever played. I was obsessed with it when I was a kid. I played it all the time. I mean, I'm talking like brain developing years. I was playing Super Mario Brothers 3. So can't discount that as a factor in why it like hits me so hard. But I think that, and I've never played as much of Super Mario World, so it's hard for me to really make that comparison. But I just love the look and feel of this game so much. Granted, the next one obviously made technical improvements and stuff, but this one just sticks with me in some way.
Basically, everything that Joe said, you could just switch the two around, and that's me, because I grew up with Super Mario World. Super Mario World was my first video game, and yada, 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 yada. But I still appreciate Super Mario Brothers 3.
Yeah, and I think the number one thing that anybody can appreciate about Super Mario Brothers 3 is, Super Mario Brothers is one of those games that like fundamentally changed the game, right? It was a platformer like we hadn't seen before. It was an adventure like that wasn't done, and so had so many clones after it. And it's kind of crazy that we're at, this is game 270 something, and we haven't seen a game take on this kind of scale. We've seen some features here and there, but we haven't seen something like Super Mario Brothers 3. So like, it's crazy that yet again, Shigeru Miyamoto and his team have like figured out how to plus up a game that was already groundbreaking. I actually don't know which one I would think is more influential to video games, Super Mario Brothers 1 or Super Mario Brothers 3.
I'd hazard a guess that the first one.
Yeah. but I think that this built off it in like the best possible way to like keep that momentum going. I mean, think of how many games were like groundbreaking and then sequels were good and then they just slowly fizzled and whatever. But like, I mean, even Super Mario Brothers 2, which we have decided on this podcast was a great game, but at the time I think people were kind of like confused by it, so like it could have easily just been like the end of that formula. and this feeling more like the actual true sequel to that original game just did nothing but improve on the mechanics.
So we're just way too hyped about Super Mario Brothers 3 at the moment, and we're saying all these amazing things about it. I feel like the only natural place to go from here is to not waste anybody's time and see if Super Mario Brothers 3 is going to be on the Essential Games list. That's right. We're doing it right at the top of the episode, but can this really be called the top of the episode if we're like 10 minutes in? I don't know. You decide. We're still going to do a whole episode after this. This is just a formality at this point, if you will, because I don't think it's right to the listeners to have you guys wait all the way to the end.
Dessert before dinner.
There you go. Why not? I mean, you as a podcast listener, you just learned that you have that power. Sean just empowered you to eat your ice cream before your baby back ribs. I don't know. That's a really weird dinner and dessert, but there you go. Hey, it only takes 2 hours to cook those things on the barbecue.
It's true.
And it only takes about, I'd say, 20 minutes to find out that Super Mario Brothers 3 is one of the greatest games of all time. And it's a no-brainer. It's obviously going on the Essential Games list. There's so much to love about Super Mario Brothers 3, and hopefully we'll cover a good chunk of it in this episode. But even still, like, it's not the kind of game that you shouldn't listen to us talk about it if you haven't played it yourself. Like, you just got to go out there and feel this game out, because this is the example of a game that continues to evolve, reinvent itself, like take ideas that it places and then change them in surprising ways. As far as even like the world maps, like there's creative solves there too, where one in particular, I think it's World 5, where it's like, oh, this is a shorter map. I wonder like what's going on here. And then you think you've like gotten to the end of the stage, and instead you've now like gone up to the sky, and there's the second half of the world that's now, like world maps are even changing and dynamic in this game. Like that's so cool. There are so many things to love about the game. The controls are even better than they ever were in Super Mario Brothers 1 or 2 for that matter. So it's kind of funny to say this, but I'm in the camp of Super Mario Brothers 3 not only being an essential game, but being the best of the three, followed by 2, followed by 1. So we've only ever gotten better Super Mario Brothers games on this system so far. Verdict's out on when we get to Mario is Missing and Mario's Time Machine, if those games will continue to push the envelope and be better than these Super Mario Brothers games. But right now, I think my order is 3, 2, 1. But since we brought it up already, I'll just mention that yes, Super Mario World is a better game. Guys, it's a no-brainer. Super Mario Brothers 3, like, there's not much different from World, but World introduces Yoshi and has the cape, and the levels get, like, really, like, even more crazy and more dynamic, and they even created, like, super challenging extra stages for expert players. I love stuff like that. So, yes, I am going Super Mario World, but that's not the point of this Essential Games List vote. This is still one of the greatest games of all time. Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I gotta echo almost all of that, where, it's just, there's so much to discover in this game, not just in the levels on the world map. There's different ways you can play it. I mean, you can play this game 100 times and still find, like, new things. There's just, like, every level has secrets in it, and the levels feel like they are just completely designed around fun. And like I said, when I was a kid, I played this game all the time, and I know in the past I've talked about how, like, I had an NES as a kid, but, like, I didn't play a lot of games. It was because I was playing this game. And, like, there were, like, so many times I wasn't able to, like, understand the nuances of it at the time, but, like, there were so many times I would put in another game, and I just was always like, well, this isn't on the same level. It doesn't feel as good to play as Super Mario Bros. 3, and I really think that was because Super Mario Bros. 3 is so ahead of its time, it feels like it's just a much more polished game. I'm definitely putting this on the Essential Games list early here in this episode. And as far as my opinion between Super Mario World, like I said, I've never actually beaten Super Mario World, so it's really not a fair assessment on my part. Maybe if I gave it more of a chance, I would have a different opinion. But for me, in at least the first few worlds, I always felt like there was just a little more of a challenge in this game. Hard, take that with a grain of salt, because like I said, maybe it gets way more challenging later in the game. Also, I just love the art style in this game, and a lot of the Super Nintendo games felt like a lot more like rounded and, like, I don't know, more kiddie, which, like, obviously that's weird to say because it's obviously very kiddie, but that was just my, like, young kid brain having that, like, visceral reaction right away. But yeah, Essential for sure.
And Joe, just to follow up, because we also mentioned, or at least I mentioned, my order. What is your order for the Super Mario Brothers trilogy?
Same as yours, 3, 2, 1.
All right.
Love 1, but it's just, you can feel the places that it improved on in the future, like not being able to backtrack and things like that. And then 2, just being so unique and different. Like, it's hard for me. Like, 3, 2, 1 is definitely my order. But it's weird putting 2 in there at all. It's such a different game. But yeah,
right,
3,
right.
2, 1.
And I do want Sean to talk, so I'm going to have him vote next. But I think, like, the thing about 1, because people will say, like, oh, what are you saying about 1? Like, it's an essential game too. It's like, yeah, it is. But it's probably mostly because it's a significantly shorter game. If Super Mario Brothers 1 was the length of Super Mario Brothers 3, but controlled the way that Super Mario Brothers 1 does, and didn't have world maps and all that, and was, like, a little more punishing, I don't think it would hold up as well as it does. Like, half the fun is that it lays down just enough time that you can always pick it up, and it's fun to pick it up from the very beginning and start at World 1-1 over and over again, no matter how many times you've played it. With that said, Sean, please, we'd love to hear your vote.
I do think it's funny that Super Mario World is suddenly on trial, but I understand. That's still gonna be my number 1 after this episode, but and I didn't actually have a list prepared in terms of order, but 3, 2, 1 does sound right, but I kind of also lean towards 3-1-2, but what does it matter? This is for Super Mario Brothers 3. Yeah, I have pretty much the same praises to sing. I really appreciate the variety of gameplay in this game. Again, like this is one of the few games that we played for this this podcast that I do actually have some personal history with. Not too much, because I was just some tyke with Super Mario All-Stars and didn't really know why these were all in like one game and like what is the story here. But now actually, becoming sort of a lay expert on these games just by virtue of playing hundreds of NES games and knowing the historical significance. And no, this is just a fun game, and I'm not going to go through all the specifics right now like you guys did, but I agree this is an essential game.
Great. So we got the hard stuff out of the way right off the bat. For anybody who was concerned, this podcast thinks that Super Mario Bros. 3 is a must-play, and it is on the Essential Games list. And now we're going to talk about a bunch of things, Super Mario Bros. 3, and I would like to start with maybe my most challenging question. And you must answer it. You can have fun with it or not, but you must answer it. We'll start with Joe. What's one thing you don't like about Super Mario Bros. 3?
One thing I don't like. I did write something down somewhere. Oh, see, it's hard. Okay. Here's something that I can see people saying as a flaw. It doesn't answer your question because I do like it because I'm so used to it. I know people talk about this game of the Mario games being the most slidey feeling of the physics. And I think that I can't remember exactly how World controls, but as far as the NES games, that is, I think, definitively true. I like it, again, because it's like literally like, that's like when I developed motor skills was learning this game, so like I'm very used to it. But I can understand that as a criticism. Something I don't like about this game, okay, here's what I don't like about this game. I think it just needed a battery. I would just like to be able to save it. So many times in my life, I was like, me and my cousin used to play this game all the time, and we'd be like, let's play through this game, and we would have to like leave the NES on like overnight if we couldn't get through it all, or like try and like, don't let anyone touch it, because especially by the time we were playing it, it was an old NES, so it was very finicky. If anyone like breathed wrong, the game would reset. So like that is something, I don't know if that's like a cop-out because it's not really gameplay or game design related, but I wish that there was a save system, even a password system or something in this game.
I think that's totally valid. Sean, what's your one thing you don't like?
I'm gonna start this with a recollection of my childhood memories. I always remember this one feeling like, I know we joked about this before we recorded, but like as the most haunted, like this, there's something really strange about the feel of this game. And I think I was a little uncomfortable playing it when I was a kid. I don't know if it's like the whole like the whole play aspect of it, or like just the subtle difference in art style, and the world map had just like things crawling on it, and you weren't really sure what they were at the beginning, and it just feels kind of cursed. And I don't think that now, but there is still some part of the developed part of my brain that does have those memories. Aside from that, I guess like I know that this is sort of up to you as the player, but I think it still counts as a critique in my modern experience. But you can miss a lot of this game, not even just the secrets. Like you could just sort of skip the level in a lot of situations. And I know that that's always sort of been a thing, like you could jump worlds in one, and so on and so forth. But just the fact that if you've got the raccoon suit and you get a little bit of speed and you can just jump over a lot of stuff, I always thought that was strange. But this is such a nitpick that it doesn't really matter. So you asked for it and you got it.
Oh, and I appreciate it, but Sean, I can't help, as somebody who also said Super Mario World is the better game, I can't help but like laugh because isn't that like the whole complaint about the cape? Is that it's even worse? It's like magnified. You could skip over the entire levels when you build up enough.
You asked
speed
for a
with the
critique
capes.
and you got one.
Thank you. Okay. And then my one thing I don't like about Super Mario Brothers 3, and I didn't have to think about this. This is what brought the question up, is that I was playing the game and I said, this is probably the one thing I don't like about Super Mario Brothers 3, and that is that when you get to the mid-boss in every single world where you fight Boom Boom, the like not quite Koopaling, like I don't know if he's like
Bosses are way too easy.
yeah, but I'm not even talking about like the Koopalings. Like at least those guys change up like what kind of platforms they're on, you know? So it's like, okay, well, how am I gonna get around them or whatever? They're still way too easy. But Boom Boom is literally the same every single time. It's not challenging. Even like 8-year-old me was able to figure out that like as soon as he like puts his spikes up, you just have to count like 1 second and then you can immediately bop him on the head again. And it's crazy that this might have changed in the very last encounter with Boom Boom. I might be making that up in my head. I might be remembering a different Super Mario Brothers game. But like otherwise, they never defy your expectations on that. They never make it like, oh, and now you're about to jump on him, and psych, he does it again. Like, and now you lose your power up. Like
it is a bummer because I do that all the time too, where it's like I just jump, he goes down, and like literally I jump again immediately, and the amount of time I'm in the air is enough time that when I land, it hits him again. So it's like there's literally no danger of him hitting me at all. Kind of a bummer because there are actually, I don't know how many, but there are change-ups in Boom Boom. Like one of them has wings at one point, and like if you're not using that strategy, which I didn't for a long time when I was a kid because I just didn't figure it out, it's actually kind of like scary. All of a sudden he just starts flying. It like freaks you out, like because you're like, oh shit, like what do I do next? But unfortunately, yeah, it is designed in a way where you can just totally cheese it immediately and never see any of that.
And it's funny when you think about the Sean was talking about how it's a little curse that things are moving on the world map. Like you can run into the Hammer Brothers or the Boomerang guy, and it's like those feel like much bigger boss battles for me at least than like they feel like, oh shit, I could lose my raccoon suit if I'm not careful if I run into these guys. Whereas with Boom Boom, it's like, all right, I just gotta like stay on my half of the stage at the most.
Yeah, I agree. Those Boomerang people are really, anything that's walking around on the map is like more challenging definitely than Boom Boom and probably than most of the Koopa kids. Although there are later Koopa kids, if that's what they're called, that I do think give me a little bit of a challenge.
Joe, you're right. They are Koopa kids, and then later are retconned into Koopalings, which is what I called them because they were originally Bowser's kids, and then somewhere along the line they were like, actually, Bowser Jr. is Bowser's kid, and the Koopalings are just cousins of Bowser. And it's like, you made a whole game where that wasn't true, and people love that game. So why would you change that, you know? It's not like it, like if anything, Super Mario Sunshine is the bad game. I said it, but it's true. Super Mario Sunshine is the bad game, and they shouldn't have tried to change Bowser's story for that game when Super Mario Brothers 3 had already established lore that contradicts it.
I'm going to hard agree with that, even though I have not played Super Mario Sunshine and know nothing about the lore.
And the Koopalings, since we're on the subject, are they cool? I said that at least, the way that you fight them is slightly altered from one another, but it is still the same idea, right? Bop them on the head, wait for them to come out of their shell, and then bop them on the head again. Do you need it to be any more challenging, though, really?
Honestly, the game, the going into those castles, like, yeah, the level itself may be pretty difficult, but the actual boss actually felt like a relief moment, so I don't think that was the intended effect, so probably not for the best.
See, I'm just particularly bad at those bosses, but like other than the Boom Boom ones, which like I said, you could cheese the Koopa kids, they like their timing is different enough that like if I get through the whole level, which I will agree that the level itself usually is harder of those ships with the cannons and everything, But if I get through the whole level and get to it, I am like a little bit like, oh shit, like this is gonna be like if I'm small, if I don't have Super Mario, if I'm just like regular small Mario, I'm like I'm in danger just because like they change it up enough, and like I've played this game so many times, but I still forget like which one's which. That there's like one that when he lands, you can't move for a couple seconds because there's like a shockwave, and there's one where like the projectiles bounce all over the place, and like those change ups always get me.
People who say Super Mario Bros. 3 is an easy game must be very good at not losing power-ups because, yeah, it's a very easy game when you're Raccoon Mario or Tanuki Mario or Frog Mario or whatever Mario, right? But, like, if you're the small Mario, you're always just one bad move or misplaced enemy away from dying. And so I think that is pretty challenging.
Playing as Frog Mario was actually playing hard mode though, so
unless you're in water, yeah.
I was just trying to list off power-ups. Do people say what, Joe?
Is that a common thing that Super Mario Bros. 3 is an easy game? Because
no.
I consider myself pretty good at this game compared to any other NES game. And like I played through this once this past week with a friend of mine, and it took us a while. We had some stuff, but now that I got like my muscle memory of it back. Played through it again. I can get through most of the first 5 levels, the 5 worlds, pretty easily. But like those last 7 and 8, there's some challenging stuff, especially 8.
8 is
really
a nightmare.
hard, I think.
Well, I'll just say right off the bat that I was not able to get even past World 4. So even there's some difficulty. But I'm a historically bad video game player, so.
I think people just say that it's an easier game because it is one that you can complete, and there are many NES games that if you're not good at NES games, you just can't get very far in. But Joe, I completely agree with you. People who say that this game is easy are talking about World 1, 2, maybe 3. They're not. They don't even get to World 8, and that World 8 tank to this day still gives me nightmares. Like it's so hard. It's just such a hard level that if you don't have the right power up going into it, I feel like for me, that's like a thing where I've got to figure out like, okay, well then what is my game plan? Like how many lives do I have?
Yeah, exactly. And you have all these like variations of that tank, which are basically just variations of the ship levels at the end of every world. You got like 6 of them or something, or 4 of them or something, and then level 1. Like you got to go through all these things, and they're like, oh, there are actual stages in this too. So like that always just like is discouraging.
Right, but that's it's thematically really cool that you're basically going through the Koopa Armada, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. Epic.
And so, that brings me to my next point. This is not a belief I have, but I think it's worth the discussion since we're all, so positive on the game. Could you explain, potentially, if there is somebody listening to the show, I'm not saying that this person exists, if there was someone on the show who didn't like this game, could you explain why it's okay that basically all the worlds follow the same format of just, 3 levels, then a mid-castle, then a couple more levels, then an airship, rinse and repeat with some mini games in between? Can you explain?
So you're saying that that's the only problem that they'd have with this game?
Well, I'm saying that you could see that as a gameplay loop. You could see that as a very repetitive thing where it's like, okay, I beat, we've had that complaint before that like once you beat the gameplay loop, you just get thrown into the next set of levels. And I think that somebody would say that like, yeah, this game's great, but you just keep doing the same thing over and over again.
I would say to that person that is all video games. I'd say that's a pretty long loop. I mean, it takes, they're relatively short levels, but if you add all of those levels together and adding in the mini games and taking into account you dying and having to play them again, like I'd say that's a lot of variety put into a standard play session. And I would say that is not a valid argument.
Yeah, I mean the game is levels. So, like, the loop of being like, oh, you finish this, you're just thrown into more levels. It's like, yeah, that's just more of the game. But, like, as far as like the world map feeling repetitive, I personally don't think that matters so much. One, because it's just really sort of a vehicle to get you to
it's
each
a framing
level,
device, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we have talked about already how like the levels just you could be almost done with the game and they just throw something new at you. Like there's even like things that are just like one-off game design
world,
elements. Yeah, where it's like so there's always like something new or some new trick or some new like way to approach a level that keeps it fresh in that sense. But as far as like the world map thing goes, even each world map is like, I mean, there are secrets and differences on that. Where you're like, oh my god, now all of a sudden there's two. I always call them dungeons, the mid-world dungeons in each one. Yeah, the secret island in the second world, and like, you know, like power-ups that appear and stuff. And there's even like things that for years, I mean, literally decades of me playing this game, suddenly I see like new things. There's like that, there's like a secret mushroom hut where you can get like an anchor power-up that I never knew about for so long. And actually, I think I learned about it like a couple of years ago and totally forgot about it and just saw it again while researching for the game. And I'm like, how have I played this game so many times and never organically come across that? So like, I guess my point is that there's just, it's not repetitive. It's like, you know, like I guess it is like literally on some sense, but I think that it's always throwing something new at you.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's what I would say too to anybody who thinks that like, you know, it's 90 levels first off, which is crazy that we went from 32 in Super Mario Brothers 1 to 90 unique levels in this game, but also that through each world, like even the layouts of the world are different. Like when you get to World 4 where Sean got to, now it's like everything is giant. Like so even just the types of enemies and the layouts of the levels change between like when you get to the Iceland and now everything's even more slippery. Like what keeps the game fresh over and over again, despite just moving through a map of, you know, level, castle, level, airship. Like, what keeps the game so fresh is that they're constantly changing the elements around you in a way that isn't just, okay, well, here's another, you know, like, if anything, Super Mario Brothers 1 would have that complaint more, because there's
every video game would have that complaint to some extent.
Well, I don't think that, though, because I think we've made that argument about other games that, like, yeah, like, this is the game, and then, like, you know, then you go on to the next level, but the gameplay loop itself is stale. But I'm saying, I think Super Mario Brothers 3, the gameplay loop never gets stale, because even if you are just going from beginning to end, the way you do that, on a level-to-level basis, on a world-to-world basis, completely changes.
Yeah.
In a way that's exciting. Unlike, you know, I guess, for a really bad example, like The Legend of Kage for me. Like that, you know, there are completely different levels, but the gameplay loop of getting from the beginning and the end to those stages is very frustrating and not fun. And so I don't want to do that again after I've done it once, you know, let alone 90 times.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying if you have that complaint for this game, then you would find that fault in all games.
You don't go very long in this game without like a little dopamine hit. You know, it's like there's a slot machine game that you come across a lot. There's like the little mushroom hunts with power-ups. There's like a card game where you match the cards. There's always like a little thing that's like, oh, this is a fun little like almost like gambling moment where I can get some power-ups, I can get some cool things just on the world map. So like that also probably contributes.
The card matching one is, for me, the most fun, but also the most frustrating, because the other ones are instant gratification things where you either line up the puzzle or you didn't. You either collect the power up in chest number 1 or 2 or 3, but you can't get the other 2. The matching the cards is like this thing that happens over the span of an entire world map, and it's like you're expected to remember, but you're only given like enough guesses to definitely be wrong the first time. You know, like there's not enough time. You only get 2 guesses, and there's 15 things to match. It's like, knock it off. But the good news is that all those mini games are inconsequential. A bad video game would make it so that the matching card thing is like, well, if you didn't match it, you lose a life.
Yeah, or like if you didn't get the prize from it, you can't beat Bowser.
Right.
Like,
Tower of Jiraga vibes.
yeah.
Which is on our Bytes feed. If you're like, what the heck? Like, no, you didn't miss an episode. You'd have to be on the Bytes for that. And I'm just plugging shit on a very special episode of Nostalgia. Anyway. Be specific here. There are a lot of things that you could describe in this game as satisfying, and most people would talk about, for better or for worse, the weight of Mario and the sliding mechanics in this game. But just whatever it is that you find most satisfying about Super Mario Bros. 3, a particular enemy, a thing Mario does, a particular power-up, what scratches that itch for you the most, no matter how many times you boot up this game, Joe?
I mean, so many things. I feel like, honestly, like, I almost feel like I'm trying to like not just gush about this game, but like it really just has such a place in my heart that like honestly everything, like literally kicking a Koopa Troopa rather, or whatever, in this game just like sounds and feels so good. It sounds like really like sadistic. Like I love kicking these helpless animals, but kicking a Koopa Troopa like turtle shell at something else and knocking into something else, like the sound it makes and the feeling like of like the physics of it just like feel really good. But then also like at the end of each level, I mean, if you haven't played this game, play it, but like if you have it, just so you know, at the end of the level, instead of like jumping on a flagpole, there's this little slot machine thing that's rotating between star, mushroom, fire flower really fast, and you pick one, and if you get for 3 levels in a row, you get 3 stars, you get 5 level ups. And there actually is like a method to making sure you get the one you want. Like there's a spot you got to hit the box at the right speed and everything, but getting 3 stars in a row and getting those 5 level ups is very satisfying for me.
In terms of just a specific moment or moments in this game, I'd say when you've beaten a boss and they drop the wand, just like timing that perfectly right at the apex of the bounce of the wand, and then hearing the music change to that whole like kind of dreamy, like I'm falling back to earth to give this back to a weird king. That's very satisfying. I find that like, yeah, that gives me some kind of fuzzies. And then on a more general concept level, all of the designed moments of, I mean, I guess that's also a design moment of satisfaction for the player, but anytime you see like, oh, I wonder if there's something over here, there almost always is, whether it's like a hidden block or just something too high to normally be drawn on the screen, but if you jump a little bit, it's there, and you got this whole other platform with some goodies on it. Just those little moments, I'd say, are very satisfying.
The most satisfying moment in this game, of which you both have noted there are many, is when you have your P meter like at full capacity, and you're at the end of the stage, and you hit the it's like it cycles through star, mushroom, and flower in a box. And if you have your P meter at full and you hit it at just like the bottom left of the box, you are guaranteed a star. It happens every single time. 3 of those stars lights up a firework animation where it like shoots up into the sky. The camera tracks with it. It blows up a big star, and you get 5 1-ups. And that is such a satisfying thing to happen. Doesn't necessarily happen often in the later stages, but early on it's very easy to make sure that you end, especially because there's very little pitfalls and stuff like that, and you're mostly rocking the raccoon suit. It's very easy to see that animation a few times, and it feels good, and it keeps me motivated to continue to collect stars and not just like, it's the same thing as like with the flagpole in the original Super Mario Bros. 1. It's like you wanna pull down the flagpole from the top. You don't want to just jump into the end of the level. You want to finish the level with style, which is another cool thing about this game. Most games, you're just happy with beating the level. I think it's hard to say that, like, yeah, in this game, I want to finish with style. Like, there's not too many games, a weird comparison is like the Sonic Adventure games or all the 3D Sonic games. Like, they give you a score at the end of the level, and you want to get the S one, right? You don't want to just finish with, like, a C. That feels bad. It feels like, yeah, I beat the level, but, like, on what grounds?
Yeah, I would associate that with, I guess, more Devil May Cry, because Sonic's just not my style, but I get you. I hear you.
It felt right to compare Sonic to Mario.
I don't see the connection.
Yeah, Devil May Cry, I think, is
Devil
more,
May Cry is better.
Closer to Mario.
Did any of us mention the whole, like, in the original game, the Koopa Troopa Infinite 1-up glitch? In this game, it's just much easier to, like, constantly jump on Goombas that are coming out of warp pipes, but use the raccoon suit to float in the air until the next Goomba comes out and then get 1-ups that way. That's, like, another thing that's, like, I think some people would say it's satisfying. For me, that's just like, I don't know if I need that many lives in my life.
You have mentioned two situations in this segment that, like, you seem to be taking for granted that we all know, but I did not know. The 1-up glitch and then, like, the specific mechanics to guarantee a star were both unknown to me.
The 1-up glitch I always forget about, but I will say that I do think that's a flaw. Because if you don't do that, I mean, I guess it is legitimate because it's in the game, but if we consider it illegitimate, like, if you don't do that, there are so many legitimate ways that are really fun and as satisfying as all these other things we've been talking about to get, like, a ton of extra lives. One of them just being the one you just described, Mike, of the getting 3 stars at the end. But there are so many secret hidden ways to get these extra lives that, like, clearly so much thought and care were put into, like, having every level have, like, these secrets, or at least most levels have these secrets, and, like, you feel good when you find it. And Sean, like you said, like, there's always, it's never, like, impossible to find, because there's always, like, a feel like, oh, I bet you there's something over there because something looks a little different over there. Like, sometimes it even feels like subconscious, but it's like, oh, like, that block's sticking out weird. I bet you I can, like, jump off of that onto something else or whatever. And so, like, it feels like that glitch that hack that you're describing, Mike, is, like, takes away from that if you know how to do that. Because it's like, well, why should I do that if just in literally level 2 I can use this glitch to get as many lives as I want, as long as I get them within the time limit.
Right. Yeah, I don't condone it either, Joe. I agree with you.
Disavowed.
I don't think you need 99 lives. This isn't that kind of game. Like, that's for the person who's already beat this game and now just wants to, like, try something different. So Mario is known for the power-ups, but only looking backwards, right? Like, I feel like in Super Mario Bros. 1, the mushroom is a cool power-up that makes a bigger man. Like, that's a funny thing, and we take that for granted that, like, you eat a mushroom and you become bigger, and now that's, like, the true Mario form. Like, whatever, that's funny, that's silly. And then there was the Fire Flower, which felt really powerful in the first game. In Super Mario Bros. 3, I want to avoid the Fire Flower at all costs.
Yeah,
like,
no, it's
I do
raccoon
not
all
want
day,
it.
every day.
Yeah. So, 1, is the raccoon suit too op for the game? And 2, what's your favorite power-up?
I think I'd say that the raccoon suit, like, it feels wrong to play this game without maining the raccoon suit. It's like, I don't know. There's definitely an analogy here, but, like, playing something with that made all of these innovations, and then like, going to a restaurant, going to a McDonald's that's got the McRib, and, you know, you've been waiting for the McRib, but you're just going to get a Big Mac, you know? You want to go with the new thing.
So wait a minute, is the raccoon suit
the raccoon
Big Mac?
suit is the McRib?
Okay. I thought maybe like some of these other rarer ones were the McRib.
Well, I meant, like, you know, because there hasn't been a raccoon suit before.
Gotcha.
The frog is the like a milkshake that doesn't actually come out.
It's the Shamrock Shake.
It's the Shamrock Shake. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say I think that the raccoon suit is the most, maybe not necessarily the most useful, but the most useful thing that is normally accessible. Like, I guess the Tanuki suit is like definitively a better version of the raccoon suit, but the raccoon tail is like, you should main that. And I've always agreed that, like, I generally avoid the fire flower in this game. Literally until this week when I played through it, there were a couple times where I was like, I guess the fire flower, I've always been so pro raccoon suit that, like, there are some levels, World 3, like level 3, where there's that giant cheap fish jumping around. He kills you in one hit no matter what. That always gave me so much trouble, and it just, like, dawned on me that, like, if I just have the fire flower there, I'll just kill that thing. Like, every time it comes back, I just kill it again, and it's, like, actually not that hard of a level when I was replaying it today. So, like, there are some times where I will say that I go fire flower, but yeah, raccoon suit is the best one that you can get frequently.
Yeah, frequently is a good point too, Joe, because I think when people think of the power-ups in this game, you would think of Super Mario, Fire Mario, Raccoon Mario. There is Tanuki Mario, which at first I was like, is this just a different skin? Like, what's like, isn't this just Raccoon Mario, but now he's like full raccoon, like, you know, like in a suit? But no, he can also turn into a statue to avoid enemies, which is really cool. A really cool idea, but you don't get that often. So when you get that feels like extra special. Also, Hammer Brothers Mario, which besides being able to throw hammers, which is a really cool thing, I wish you could just be every kind of enemy in this game. Like, I just wish you could turn into, you know, Koopa Troopa Mario. Like, that would be interesting to move.
The Hammer Brothers Mario sort of is Koopa Troopa Mario, because you're in like a shell, you can duck down into your shell and protect yourself.
Yeah, you can even shield yourself from the fireballs, which is cool. But I guess what I meant is, like, Koopa Troopa Mario could, like, move faster in the shell, but, like, you know, and, like, wipe through enemies that way. But maybe, like, cool. There'd have to be a reason why you wouldn't just use that all the time.
They should try and find a way to work his hat into that concept too. Like, that would be pretty cool.
Little Koopa helmet hat?
No, like, you use your hat, and then you can...
Okay. It went over my head for a second, like most hats do, but now I got it.
Jeez.
And what's funny when we're talking about the power-ups is whether the Raccoon Mario is too good or not, it's either something that you can lose very frequently if you're not being careful with it, right? So it does require certain amount of skill to be able to main it. Granted, they do give it to you a lot, but also this whole thing of, you know, Raccoon Mario, Tanuki Mario, Frog Mario, Hammer Mario, even P-Wing Mario, which is probably the most op one because it gives you indefinite P power, but also you get to be Raccoon Mario, so it's like, that's the one that you really want. All these to say that, like, I guess that's the point I was making earlier, is like, future Mario games are just going to be like, yeah, and now he's a helicopter, and now he's, you know, like, now he has a cape. It's like, it's interesting that this game really, like, went to town on the levels and the power-ups and, like, how they work together. And then the other games just kind of say, like, well, here's one new thing. Like, it's like, man, this game really front-loaded Mario power-ups and how we see them.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't played, admittedly, a much modern Mario. Honestly, past Super Mario World, I haven't played, I don't think, any, like, side-scrolling Mario other than, like, levels in Mario Maker. But from what I understand, it seems to be like it's mostly like references and callbacks to older Marios rather than like I don't know. I've seen like, isn't there one where you can turn into like a cat or something?
Yeah,
and
Cat
like,
Mario, and look, that's great, and it's a whole like Cat Mario is different because that's like a 3D Mario game, so it is kind, it's not like in the so like there's the new Super Mario Brothers games, which totally are, working off the Super Mario Brothers 3 format, and then what you're saying with Cat Mario is kind of like Super Mario Brothers because it's less like Super Mario 64, if that makes sense. It's more like Super Mario Brothers, but it's 3D, so it's not really like Super Mario Brothers 3. That said, yes, the cat power-up at the end of the day really is just another new power-up that this game really introduced the idea of power-ups to, is what I'm getting around to. And it's also, this game, the introduction of the boos, the ghosts that only follow you when you are not looking at them. There are other enemies in this game that are in the Mario lore that still like show up from time to time and stuff like that. But the boos are definitely the most famous introduction, but also what an amazing idea for an enemy, like a ghost that is shy when you look at it. It's just such a smart idea.
Yeah, this is, I think one of my, the sounds that are most easy to call back in my childhood memory brain is like that creaky door from the haunted houses in Super Mario World, and seeing them, because I could totally forgot that they were in this game. Seeing them here kind of like gave me that whole nostalgia for it. I think it's a brilliant little piece of micro AI that adds to certain natural puzzles in the level design here. I think it's cool.
That they're not just making like, oh, this is a cool enemy who shoots another thing at you. Like a lot of these enemies are like, oh, you have to think about this enemy differently than you did anything else. And the boos and those flames that do the same thing, they like walk at you when you're not looking. Like, yeah, it's just an interesting concept where you have to be running through the level, but also focusing on like you're literally keeping these ghosts at bay by facing them. It gives me like good anxiety. It gives me like video game anxiety. We're like, oh no, like what do I do next?
You have to face your fears.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's like twofold. Like first, it is a an anxiety thing where you're like, oh, this boo is going to tag me, like I'm going to get caught. And then once you get familiar with the enemy, it becomes this thing where you're like strategically, like as soon as you're getting in front of them, you're like staring right at them. It's like, nope, don't come any closer. Like once you've figured them out, then it becomes a new game of like, well, now that I know how to keep them away, how do I manage that while going forward? There's two ways to play it, which is another cool thing about it. Any enemy in this game is that, unlike Koopa Troopas, it's like you can hit them and take them out and use them to clear blocks or whatever, or you can just outright avoid them. Like so many other enemies in this game, it's a choice to avoid them or not. The boos, you don't get that choice. You can't defeat the boos unless you have the star power. So you have to choose whether to have them chase you and just be faster and rush through the level, or play this game of like peekaboo with them.
Yeah. Whoa, that's the name of the enemy.
Whoa. Other than the power-ups, too, there are items in this game that are unique to this game and that you can collect and store in your inventory. Another really cool thing, who would have expected an inventory in a Super Mario Brothers game? I certainly wasn't expecting that when I was a kid, and it's really fun to forget about it for a while and then like get to the later stages and be like, shit, I have all of these awesome power-ups.
And you can use them on the world map too, because there's certain obstacles. Like if there'll be like a rock pile in your way, you can use the hammer to clear that out and get to. Maybe there's a little mushroom house to gamble a little bit. It's a cool aspect because I did forget that I had all these things for a while.
Yeah, it feels really good to collect those. And I mean, I'll say like later in the game, especially not even that late in the game. Like I said, like earlier today, I got decently far without too much challenge, but it's because I was using all these power-ups all the time. Like it for me, at least the way I play the game, it's important for me to have at least one power-up as a safety net. So like it's nice when you get like, okay, this level's hard, I can always have a power-up stocked. And you really feel it when you run out of items in your inventory.
And there's a few unique items that I wanted to call out. The anchor, which Joe mentioned earlier, that locks an airship in place on the world map, which will be useful in some of the worlds. The cloud that you can use to skip a level. If it's too hard, you can just use the cloud to go over it.
And can I just jump in and say that cloud is definitely and has always been a tooth in my mind.
Yeah,
I always thought it was a tooth, the tooth power up,
Yeah.
and then like one day I like realized some of the clouds look like it.
The music box, which will put enemies to sleep. The enemy is not in the levels themselves, but the Hammer Brothers and such that are on the world map. And probably the most famous of any item in Super Mario Bros. 3, the Magic Whistle, which is this game's version of the Warp Zones. Does anybody actually use these ones? Like, I feel like in Super Mario Brothers, it's so obvious. Like when you're in the underground levels, like World 1, 2, and such, you can see where the warp zone leads to. It feels natural. I have to jump over it every time. Like I feel like I never play World 1, 3 when I go back and play Super Mario Brothers these days, just because it's like it's so obvious. But with the warp whistle, with the magic whistle, to get to the warp zones, it's a little more involved, and so I just kind of say, I don't think I need to do this.
Yeah, you know what? Like I always get them because in my weird brain, which is like just totally making shit up, like somebody will like burst into my room and be like, "Did you use the warp whistles?" And I'll have to prove to them that they're still in my inventory. like I would always get it like in case somebody ever asked. I could be like, "No, I got here without the whistles." But it's funny. I have in my notes that all the secrets are like, unlike like puzzles in some other games or secrets, like they're all findable. But now that you mention it, like I guess if I didn't know this at a young age, like, and it wasn't like it's actually like the least obvious thing is where some of these whistles are, especially the first one. Like I don't know if I would ever find it without somebody telling me how to find it.
I just for our listeners, because I definitely know where they are, but like where is it?
So the first one, if you on World 1, 3, you know how there are like platforms that are like pieces of like they're like solid rectangles that look like they're like bolted to the background. So the white ones, if you stand on the white one and duck for like 6 seconds or 5 seconds or something, you fall through and then you're in the background. You're behind all like the bushes and all the stuff that's on the ground. Then you can go behind you know how when you get to the end of the level, there's that like black background. You can go behind that blackness and in there is a warp whistle. So you'd have to literally duck down on a white platform for 5 seconds and then go to the end of the level.
Wow, yeah, I definitely didn't do that. So
yeah. So that one, the other ones I think are more findable, but like that one, I guess I'll walk back what I wrote in my notes. There are some secrets in here that like I don't know if are that particularly like intuitive to find.
So just another example, because I think that one's really cool, but an example of one that might be more findable, just, again, not that findable, but if you figure out, like if something's going on with that world map, like I should take a look at it. To obtain the third magic whistle, you have to defeat the Boomerang Brother, who will give you a hammer. You use the hammer to break a rock on the world map screen, which opens up a secret passage behind a palm tree. The passage leads to a Toad's house with a frog suit, as well as a pair of Fire Brothers. Defeating both Fire Brothers awards the player the whistle.
Okay, that's easier. That seems a bit more straightforward.
Yes, whereas Joe's first one is like literally, pulling the curtain, if you will, on this whole, like, it's all a play, and you're actually leaving the stage to go backstage and pick up a warp whistle to be like, guys, we need to do the express version of the show tonight because these guys have a reservation at 9. And that leads me to another point that I was going to make later, but we've arrived on it. It's all a stage play, this game. That's you find out at the very beginning with the opening, the curtain opens up, and everybody's just acting their part and everything. Good or bad idea? Does it matter? Does it make the game inconsequential? Could you care less? Could you not care less?
Yeah, honestly, this whole concept really made me lose any kind of stakes in this game. It's a play. Like I know that I'm gonna not have any emotional feelings if I know that this is actors. Now Mario is a liar actor.
That's
Explain
true.
that.
Yeah, this game sucks. This game is horrible.
Yeah, but are they acting it out in the Mushroom Kingdom, or is it even further like this is in Brooklyn?
Well, the manuals. Oh, you're saying that like this is like not even Mario. This is like an actor playing Mario.
Yeah, like
this is Timothy Chalamet.
Is it a stage play happening in the Mushroom Kingdom, right? Which is weird in itself, or is it like no? This is just a rendition of like somebody's imagination of Super Mario Brothers being told in a play.
Well, I was gonna say the funny thing is that the manual doesn't say it's a play. It says like, oh, now that the Mushroom Kingdom's safe, you have to go to the Mushroom World with all these other countries. So like that almost implies that it's like not a play, but also in the manual, the levels are called action scenes.
Okay.
So I don't know. It's never stated that it's a play, but like, yeah, a curtain rises at the beginning. And like I said, platforms are bolted to the background.
Here's what I think that's going on here. Mario hasn't really done much since Mario 1. This Mario Brothers 2 is not canon. He's only done this one thing, and that was the events that happened in Mario 1. This is him now with a little bit of money putting on his own show, exaggerating everything that happened in Mario 1. He had to hire actors to play Peach, or, the princess. And this is just his self-aggrandizement.
I could see that.
Yeah, I know. 'Cause that's what it is.
Oh, that's why I see it.
To go back to what Joe was saying about how they call them action scenes, Joe, that makes sense because the director always says action before the scene starts. So it's just short. It's just shorthand. They're action scenes.
Now I get it. Yeah.
Even mid-performance.
But who's the director here? Is it Miyamoto? Does it get that meta? Like, is he the director? Is he the stage play showrunner? Like, what's going on here?
You're the director.
Yeah, no, you're like the main actor.
That's true.
You're the Timothy Chalamet of this whole production.
I just thought it would be more poetic if I said that.
Oh yeah, we're definitely going to use that in the trailer for season 5 of Nostalgia.
You should.
But is Super Mario Brothers 3 haunted?
Yeah, I mean, Sean was pitching it.
I think it might still be.
The part where the enemies get bigger than you in that one world is kind of haunted.
Yeah, it's a little messed up. Kind of gave me weird feelings.
We have talked about like a lot of features that involve this, but I don't think we really talked about the P meter in this game, and that just feels strange. I don't know what the P is supposed to stand for.
Power.
Is that really what it is? Like you're running, so you're running and you're generating power, which the power lets you fly?
I never thought of it as power, but today, again, reading the manual, that's called the power meter, which is weird because it really only, to me, equates to speed. But yeah, that's the power meter.
Right. And so, okay, that's cool. It's all good. I like power meter. I
guess I just associated it with like a POW block.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. It's like, I don't know what that would be representing in terms of speed, but okay, speed is power. I like it. It's true on some levels. The meter builds up, and it builds up as you're running. It has this like thing where even though you never, like, I don't know about you guys, I never pay attention to the P meter. I'm never like, I'm at 3, I'm at 2/3 of the way there. Like, it just happens so fast and everything They don't really watch the UI, and yet there's something satisfying about both hearing the sound, build up, and then when you finally hit the P, the the constant sound that's like, all right, soar, baby, soar. All these things, whether you have the power-ups for them or not, the P meter is working and doing something. It's a more satisfying way of showing Mario's momentum.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, like the sound is really what does it, because it's actually kind of crazy now that I think about it, how many games didn't figure this out, but like, who wants to look at the UI when they have to be looking at the character they're controlling? So the sound is the thing that actually indicates when you're ready.
Yeah, I don't actually know how useful the UI element really is. I guess it's cute that it's there. It really ties the whole window together. But I don't think it's necessary. I think that you could learn just the rhythm that if you've been sprinting for this long, you will be able to do something else.
Yeah, I guess the only time I would say it's useful is like if I'm sprinting and there's like a short distance,
yeah,
or like that like a flat distance, I can like at least when I'm done like look and see how close I was. Granted, I still don't really need that. I could probably just I'll just sprint for a little longer somewhere where I have more time, but that is like a, I guess, quality of life little addition.
How would you remake/remaster Super Mario Bros. 3 today if you were Nintendo in order to sell it for $70?
It's a great question.
I don't know. I mean, like I said, I think that like any other game, even games that I love on the NES, I could probably give you a good answer, but like I think you could just make it look a little. I mean, it's hard to even say cleaner because this game looks so clean already. I mean, I guess just I think it just works like a game right now. I guess give it a save state or give it a save function, and I don't know. I don't think it needs this, but I guess for like modern players that aren't used to like losing progress, I guess maybe have like checkpoints. Again, it already does sort of have checkpoints, but like more of them, I guess. I think that it's designed well the way it is, but I could see people appreciating that who just like don't have the time that we used to have to play video games.
I'd say give Mario the ability to move while aiming, and then make all the zombies a little bit faster to compensate for it. And you've got a good remake on your hands.
Yeah, you're getting the assignment here, Sean, but it's true, right? Like people, I'm not saying people can't handle old NES games, right? Like this doesn't even feel like an old NES game like so many other games that we've listed as skip-its on our website. Like this doesn't feel like it's outdated. However, there is an appetite, whether people are buying them or not. Like a lot of publishers these days are re-releasing older games as HD remakes, or they're remastering these games, and they're selling them for large sums of money. Dragon Quest 3 is getting a alleged remake where it's basically going to be the game again, but now in that Octopath Traveler look. Like, Joe, any appetite for that if they made this like, it's Super Mario Brothers 3, but it's 2.5 HD, like
Super Mario Brothers 3, but post-processing, they just put every setting on. Bloom everywhere. I mean,
like, the 2.5D, like, HD thing, I don't know, but, like, I guess Super Mario All-Stars sort of already did an older version of what you're describing, is just, like, cleaning up the look of everything, and, I mean,
that game was cheaper.
You got all of them.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, I'd be willing to try this another. I guess my point is that like this game, when I pick it up, still works for me in its original form, like really well. Whereas, like, like I'll replay like even like a 2D Final Fantasy game, or even like a PlayStation 1 Final Fantasy game, and I love that it added the ability to take off random encounters when I'm feeling like just kind of running through things and stuff like that. Like, I don't know what this one needs for me for that kind of thing. Like, I don't know what it could do that would make me enjoy it that much more than just picking up my Switch and playing the original version.
And Nintendo's not really the kind of people that do that, but just noting what the game industry is like right now, I just think it would be funny that, if there's one old Nintendo game that people would probably pay $70 for to have like the HD version of it, it would be Super Mario Brothers 3,
Pixel
right?
remaster.
Yeah, exactly. Like, people are paying $70 to have like all 6 Final Fantasy games on one cartridge for the Switch, but they didn't make any changes there, really.
Didn't they add the features? I haven't played the Pixel remasters. I plan on it, but didn't they add the sort of changes I was talking about?
No, yeah, but I'm saying like they
didn't.
didn't graphically change the games or any,
Right.
So you could get away with this. Like, you could release, and they do.
Yeah.
They just make you pay monthly to play Super Mario Brothers 3 these days.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, that would be annoying. But you're also talking to a guy who's bought the Kingdom Hearts collection like 6 times. So
yeah,
so I'm a sucker.
And speaking of just like, what would you add to this game to sell it for $70? I mean, Nintendo did find a way to get people to buy this game again when it became Super Mario Advance 4 on the Game Boy Advance. Joe, any experience with Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Brothers 3? That's confusing.
No.
Wait, is that...
I remember
Oh.
I remember one day when I was younger, I was probably like in middle school or whatever, discovering that it existed and being like, I have to get that, but I didn't have a Game Boy Advance, but I was almost willing to buy a Game Boy Advance just for that game. Just like the idea of having this game I played as a kid in my pocket was really cool. But no, I never actually ended up playing it.
Wait, so, okay, it's called Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Brothers 3.
Yes, that's literally what it's called.
And is it just Super Mario Brothers 3?
It is Super Mario Brothers 3 with the NES graphics and everything, okay? Except for here comes the big twist. I'm sure everybody who's listening knows this, but you guys don't seem to. There are like 32 or 24 new levels that are exclusive to Super Mario Advance 4 that are basically like designed by Nintendo in the Super Mario Brothers 3 world. It was I think it was called World E-Reader because it required e-reader cards that you had to scan those level cards to get into, and those are exclusive levels that you could only play in that. So that's pretty damn nifty.
I did not know.
Yeah,
that.
that's interesting. I feel like it would have been better marketing for Nintendo just to call it Super Mario Brothers 3 Advance, but I get it. I maybe not, but I kind of get it.
Oh, and it's not the
very
NES
confusing.
look. It's not the NES look. My bad.
Oh, is it the All-Stars?
It's like, yeah, it's kind of like All-Stars, but with Game Boy Advance style graphics. So, a little worse for wear.
My point stands.
Yeah, no, your point totally stands. And another interesting thing is, like, these e-reader cards did way more than just add these extra levels. Now, keep in mind, you'd have to buy packs of cards and hope that you got the levels. Which is kind of funny.
Oh, is that how that worked? I didn't even know.
Yeah, that's how it works. So you could also get like cards though for the Cape Mario from Super Mario World and put him into Super Mario Brothers 3. Now that's crazy.
See, the idea of like collecting cards to get the function of the game sounds both simultaneously stupid and really fucking cool to me.
I lean towards stupid for this stuff because, but if it were a game about collecting cards, maybe, but...
Yeah. I guess just the cool part for me is, like, the idea of, like, getting the satisfaction that, like, collecting Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh cards or whatever gives you, but then having, like, an additional function to that card where it's like, now I can play a whole level. Like, there's, like, a value, especially when you're a kid, when, like, you're not selling your Pokemon cards.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, this is worth $70. Like, no, this card is rare and it's worth a cool level on my Game Boy. But yeah, also I'd be very frustrated if I bought the game and it's like, okay, now you got to buy all these cards to hope to get the levels.
Right. Well, to make matters even worse, the cards with the levels never came outside of Japan. So people in Europe and America were just getting the other cards that didn't really do that much other than give you like some items or power-ups and stuff. The levels were only existing in Japan. So the only way to play Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Brothers 3 secret e-reader levels is with your Wii U, because it was released on the Virtual Console on Wii U, and if you bought it there, which you could no longer buy it, they took that thing down, you could have played, it came with the e-reader levels on the thing, so you didn't have to buy cards or buy additional DLC packs. It was included as part of that virtual console, and that's like a rare, cool moment for Nintendo.
They finally gave you what you paid for.
Yeah, all those years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of throwing you in jail, which is like usually the alternative with Nintendo. Super Mario Bros. 3 is a lot more than a video game, though.
It's also a way of life.
Is it a TV show?
It's a TV show. It's got T-shirts. It had a movie. Not really. The movie was the movie was the trailer for the game. The Wizard was the movie, and everybody who's anybody knew that the Wizard had footage of Super Mario Brothers 3 in it, and people were clamoring for information. So, jury's out on if that movie's any good. I'm sure some people who grew up with it because they wanted to see the Super Mario Brothers 3 footage, might have fond feelings towards it. But that was their E3 that year. Was go to the movies and watch The Wizard.
That's the one with the glove, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
But it's also a chocolate chip swirl cookie cereal.
We're going to go through all the merchandising?
I just think that's funny. You try to pull out the most extreme one. I think, Super Mario Brothers 3 getting a cereal where it's not just, Super Mario cereal, something that, became an amiibo, that I actually own a box of Super Mario amiibo cereal. Yeah.
Oh my God, I did not know that.
Yeah, you can scan it on your Switch and everything. It works. But that's like Super Mario the IP. That's not it wasn't Super Mario Odyssey the cereal. This is Super Mario Brothers 3 the cereal, which is just a bunch of cookies, which are just a bunch of spinies. So they're not the guys with the shells that you can't jump on.
The least appetizing looking ones.
Yeah, the ones that would hurt you.
Yeah.
What's the most appetizing looking enemy in this?
I mean, to an extent, if you look at it in the right light, a Goomba does look kind of ooey gooey cookie looking.
No,
See, I always thought Goomba looked mushroomy.
Yeah, I get it.
I wouldn't want a Goomba. I would want a Cheep Cheep. I bet those things taste great.
I'd like a fillet of the fish that jumps out.
Yeah, that's the Cheep Cheep.
Okay, good. I knew that.
Can we talk about the multiplayer components of this? Specifically, I mean, the multiplayer itself is, you go back and forth, you beat levels together. It's kind of like the original Mario, but you're both on the world map. Whatever, you're alternating. But the fact that you can go to the last level that your partner beat and select it, and then you'll end up in actual Super Mario Brothers, a remake of the original, not Super Mario Brothers, Mario Brothers game for the NES, and you compete against each other for some of the cards that you've collected, or just whose turn it gets to be next. How cool is that?
Yeah, I remember doing that very briefly in the All-Stars version, but I kind of forgot about that here. I think that's very fun.
Yeah, it's you work together, and when you play co-op with this game, you work together. Even though you're never playing at the same time, you are working. Okay, you beat this level. You got sometimes it's I have 2 star cards and you have 1. Can you just sacrifice that? Give it to me so I get 5 extra lives so I don't die. So then you go into that stage I'm talking about, and what you can steal cards from each other. But sometimes it's just it's just fun to kind of mess with your partner and try and take his turn away, or try and
plant your flag where theirs is.
Yeah, and in that Super Mario, or I keep saying Super Mario, that Mario Brothers stage isn't even the only stage. It's the one that usually comes up, like honestly, like 90% of the time, maybe 95% of the time. But once in a while, other little mini games that you compete against come up. There's like 3 other ones that it's just like, I don't know. This game just is always throwing more things at you that like that you can discover. But I always thought that was such a cool addition.
Yeah, I would go as far as to say that that's the better implementation of multiplayer for a Super Mario Brothers game than having 2 players on the screen at the same time, as was introduced in New Super Mario Brothers Wii, I think. It had 4 players on the screen at once.
Chaos.
Just absolute chaos. And you know, it's usually if you're playing Super Mario Brothers, it's usually like with very casual people. So there's going to be like 2 people that are amazing at the game, 1 person that knows video games and can keep up because it's Super Mario Brothers, and then 1 person who like just can't understand like that they control their character and that they have to like, you know, follow them along as they jump, and it's just a mess. It's like, well, how do you keep track of 4 different people on one screen? And it becomes a less fun experience as a result. Whereas, you know, that this version of multiplayer is more like, yeah, like we're both gonna rock this game, like we're both gonna get our go at beating these levels the way they were intended to be beaten, but also like, you know, a little mischievous on the side.
Yeah. And the nice like give and take to the multiplayer too is that like if you're playing single player, you can get a lot of extra lives, but then if you die and lose those lives, you have to go back to the beginning of the world. Unless you've gotten like a mid-world dungeon, which acts as sort of like a checkpoint or a shortcut. But if you are playing 2-player, you're not going to have as many lives. You might lose your lives more quickly. But then it's also like, if Luigi beat a stage and Luigi loses all his lives, then all of the stages that Luigi beat are back. So it's like, you have to kind of like weigh that and like work together a little bit, where it's like, okay, you beat this stage that we both had a lot of trouble on, so you can't die, or else we got to do that stage again. So it's like, you know, do what you can to try and get the other person extra lives. That's kind of what I was talking about with like giving the extra star to someone, or like, I'll try and beat this stage so you don't die. Like it gives you this little bit of like strategy, and also gives you this, if you're strategic about it, gives you the safety net where it's like, okay, I have 8 lives and you have 1, so let me beat this level. So it's less likely that we have to redo it, or vice versa. It gives you a lot to think about, and like it's basic, but it feels like a fun adventure together.
I guess now that you mention all this, it is kind of lame that in World they just switched it to a lives transfer, like bank account transaction. There was no goofy game that you'd play against each other. It just sort of happens.
Yeah. And sorry, I feel like I'm just going on and on about this multiplayer mode, but I use like just the physics of this game are so fun that honestly, my brother and I used to play this game where we would like once in a while when you do that multiplayer mode, you get a mode where there's 5 coins. Whoever collects the most coins, whoever collects 3 out of 5 coins quick enough wins. Basically, we would collect all but 1 coin. So then we could just run around on this map and not worry about it. And we would literally play tag in these physics.
Oh my God.
And it was like, it's a blast because these physics feel so fun. And like, you know, you could bounce off each other's heads. You could bop each other from beneath, you know, it's fun stuff.
When they were developing Super Mario Brothers 3, which pretty much started right after Super Mario Brothers: The Lost Levels, aka Super Mario Brothers 2 in Japan, they were actually first going to do something similar to The Legend of Zelda for Super Mario Brothers, with a top-down view of the game. Not saying it was going to be an RPG, but that the viewpoint would completely change from side-scrolling to top-down. There's not many documents that exist for that, if at all, like how that game would have worked. But it's interesting for two reasons. One, you could tell that they were always trying to change Super Mario Brothers and not just repeat like they did with the Lost Levels. Like, this was always going to be a different game. But then on the other hand, it's like, when you try to make something so different, right, or so groundbreaking from what what the successful path was, you also open up a lot of opportunities to screw it up. And so it's pretty amazing that they mostly just stuck to improving everything from the first game and making it, bigger and expansive and, going all in on the power-ups, the enemies, the levels. Again, 32 levels in Super Mario Brothers 1, 90 in Super Mario Brothers 3. I can't help but feel like that top-down thing just can't work for a platformer.
Yeah, it's definitely like Nintendo's usually pretty good about swinging for the fences and actually hitting. There are a lot of horror stories of franchises, jumping shark, and then they have to begrudgingly go back to their roots because they know it's the only way that it'll work. I guess there is a universe that we don't know. Maybe it would have worked, but I do agree that it might have been a bridge too far. But it's Nintendo. They've done weirder things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also back then it seems like a lot of these franchises like totally reinventing themselves was not uncommon. Maybe not quite that totally, but still like more than this does. But I think that it's got to be a challenge to find that happy medium between doing the same thing and becoming stale and reinventing yourself too much and becoming unrecognizable. And I think even though we loved it, I think that is something that maybe happened with Super Mario Brothers 2, where it's like, well, this isn't what we wanted because it's not the same kind of game.
Yeah, I mean, they actually had no involvement with it. It was mostly a it wasn't a Miyamoto thing, and it was a smaller team just saying like, all right, just reskin it, So I think that's why you're seeing almost no enemies carrying over. Like, where are the Shy Guys? Like, that's just not, they will be added to the Mario universe, right? Like, they will appear again, but very little of what happened in Super Mario Brothers 2, if anything, appears in Super Mario Brothers 3. There's maybe some vertical moments, but they're not the same. Like, Super Mario Brothers 2 was a very vertical game in general. Joe, you had mentioned the TV show, The Adventures of Super Mario Brothers 3. First off, what a name for a show. Does everything need to have, because it's the video game is called Super Mario Brothers 3, do we need everything to be branded around Super Mario Brothers 3? Like, we can't make the connection that if you just call the show The Adventures of Super Mario Brothers, but it's all based off of the stuff that happened in Super Mario Brothers 3, like, the audience won't be able to... Come on.
I think maybe if they should have just made it something like Everybody Loves Raymond, but just called it Mario,
I like the idea that, like, you're pitching, like, all right, we just need to make this Mario game like Everybody Loves Raymond.
It's something that I've wanted since I was a kid.
Super Mario Brothers 3, The Adventures of Super Mario Brothers 3, it was not the first Mario show. That went to the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, which had half live action, half cartoon. In The Adventures of Super Mario Brothers 3, it's all cartoon. I guess they scaled back the budget a little bit. I really enjoyed those weird live action segments where it was just, like none of the super, and it was all just the like real Mario Brothers plumbing company working out of Brooklyn, like weird mishaps happening, and Koopa being like their boss. It's just like that stuff's funny, That's more like in line with the movie, the Super Mario Brothers movie that comes out in 1993. The Adventures of Super Mario Brothers 3 is like using the same cartoon style and the same voice actors from the cartoon. For the most part, I didn't fully check that, but like Bowser's definitely the same, and he's not called Bowser, he's called Koopa, which is weird because he's Koopa in Japan, which, I only found out about. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent here. I only found out about that because in Super Smash Brothers Melee, you can change it from English to Japanese, and you'd be able to see all the Japanese consoles in your trophy closet, and I thought that was cool. But then you could bring it to the main menu screen for the character selection, and it would say their Japanese names, and instead of saying Bowser, it would go Koopa, and I always thought that was really cool. I was like, oh, wow, it actually is a different name. Same thing with Peach, it would be Princess Toadstool or whatever, I think. Don't quote me on that one. Maybe I'm making up memories. Anyway, getting back to the show, just thought it was funny that I was like, oh, let me check out, like, how does the show end? Does it end anything like, let's just jump right to the end. Does it end anything like the video game does, where you have to, like, go through Bowser's army and then infiltrate his castle? No, not at all. In the finale episode, Koopa becomes Super Koopa. He's able to take all of the power-ups from Super Mario Bros. 3 and retain them himself. So he becomes Frog Koopa and Raccoon Koopa and Tanuki Koopa. Very interesting concept. He kidnaps Luigi, takes him through the warp zone, okay, to Paris, France.
Oh. Go on.
And yeah, what does he do there? What do they do? They just vacation?
Is this like a tryst?
Mario, Peach, and a guy a French submariner, because that's like what they, like that's what they're known for in France. So they're on the water in Paris, and there's a submarine. Go figure.
Is that a French thing?
What's funny about that is, like, where is there a body of water big enough in Paris for a submarine to be just like hiding out? Like, it's got to be the worst spot to build a submarine. Anyway, they all team up and they take down Super Koopa enough to get Luigi back, and then Mario and Luigi go use every single thing, including even things like the Goomba shoe, that thing that you only have for like one level in Super Mario Bros. 3. Yeah, they use the Dragon Balls to wish back Toad to life, and sure enough, they defeat Koopa, and then the show immediately ends forever. It's crazy how rushed it feels, and one YouTube comment summed it up as, this was the worst episode of the show, which I think is funny. Like, there were probably all bad episodes, but this was the worst.
Huh. Yeah, I didn't even know that the show existed until you started talking about it.
I feel like I only knew it from you, Mike. I feel like you when we were roommates, you had sort of an affinity for these old Mario, like, bad shows, like, just that they existed, and you would always tell me about
they are terrible, but at least the adventures of Super Mario Bros. 3, like, tries to, like, revolve itself around the video game Super Mario Bros. 3. Super Mario Bros. Super Show would be like, okay, yeah, like, this episode is Aladdin, but with Mario. Like, just take the plot of Aladdin and do that. Like, it was crazy stuff. They were just like, like, okay, it's the pyramids, but with Mario. Like, it had nothing to do with the video games.
See, I wonder, because it feels like it was like the Wild West. Like today, branding for Mario would, like, not allow, like, just, like, anything to happen. I wonder how, like, much there was somebody who was, like, the authority on, like, what you could do or say with Mario, and, like, a quality checker for anything Mario by the time of Super Mario Bros. 3.
Well, Joe, it's funny you bring that up, because actually just a few years later, after Super Mario Bros. 3, there would be another show. Super Mario World would get its own show, but that's not interesting enough, because that's mostly just the Adventures of Super Mario Bros. 3 continued into Super Mario World. No, I want to talk about King Koopa's Cool Cartoons, all with K's. King Koopa's Cool Cartoons, a local television show just airing out of California on Fox Kids that had a guy dressed up like Bowser, but not really, just like with prosthetics and green makeup and stuff. Like, he didn't look like Bowser at all. And he is the host of the show, and all of these kids in the audience, it's basically like the Krusty the Clown show, where, like, he's Krusty and the kids are the audience, and they're all the Koopa Troopas, if you will. Okay. And they just keep going, Koopa, Koopa. And then he comes out and does some of the worst sketches I've ever seen in my life. It's painful to sit through this show. And then I guess, like, they would cut to cartoons, that, like, Fox Kids had the rights to in between these segments. but it was only airing in like this small little regional area of California, so only like 12 total minutes still exist to this day. And I posted it on our Discord if anybody has any interest in joining our Discord, patreon.com/nostalgia. But otherwise, you can look this up on YouTube for yourself. This is one of those things that looks like, like a Rick and Morty interdimensional cable thing where it's like, no way this happened in our universe. Like, to your point, Joe, who okayed that? Who from Nintendo knew that this happened?
And now, are you saying that it's local access? Like, is it possible that it's not actually licensed at all and this is just some dude?
No, apparently it is licensed because it was on Fox Kids, and it got as far as, like, the show had incredible ratings, apparently.
Wow.
But the president of Disney at the time, or CEO of Disney at the time, Michael Eisner, said, like, no, this is not going forward. Like, he personally stopped it, apparently. Granted, there's so little information about this that I have a hard time believing that, but that's what's on the Wikipedia article.
Wow.
I just have a hard time believing that Michael Eisner would have that, like, he'd be one of those guys who they would tell him, like, hey, King Koopa's Cool Cartoons is doing really well, like ratings are really high, and he'd say, I couldn't care
Not
less.
on my watch. Oh.
Yeah. I have some self-respect.
So all that to say, would you have liked if World 8, instead of it being like in the Dark Land or whatever it's called, or Koopa's Castle, would you have preferred it to be in Paris, France?
I think that'd be pretty cool. A submarine in Paris.
It would have been unexpected, I'll admit.
Final battle on top of the Eiffel Tower? I don't know if this is a Super Mario Brothers 3 question, but I put it out there, and I'm asking a lot of questions today, so I figured let's go for it. This is Super Mario Brothers 3. We played Super Mario Brothers 2, but not the real Super Mario Brothers 2, but we call it Super Mario Brothers 2. And nobody calls it Super Mario Brothers 1, right? Like, you just say Super Mario Brothers like a normal person, and everybody understands what you're talking about.
Yes.
We agree on all these things?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, yeah, okay, so Joe, I know you're like, yes, but it's okay to say Super Mario Brothers 1.
I do say it sometimes
Okay.
because I say that about a lot of things that aren't actually number one, but that's just me.
Right, but like, okay, so we're gonna play Ninja Gaiden 2 and 3. Are you gonna call it Ninja Gaiden 1, Ninja Gaiden 1, or are you just gonna say Ninja Gaiden?
I'm going to call it 1.
All right.
Like, not always, but yeah, I'm going to call it 1 just to, like, I don't know. I guess I don't need to differentiate, but I always did. Like, Ratchet and Clank, and then, I mean, they're not even called Ratchet and Clank 2 and 3, but, like, I still call it that. But, like, I'll just say Ratchet and Clank 1 just to be absolutely clear, which one I'm talking about.
Yeah, kind of like...
Or
I
Final
still call
Fantasy
it,
1.
Yeah, I still call it, like, Shadow of the Colossus 1.
But there's no 2.
Right.
It's still the first one.
It's still the first one.
Yeah, there's still a chance. Like, we shouldn't say they're, any E3.
I'm just sending out good vibes,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Citizen Kane 1, great movie.
Well, you can call Titanic 1 because they did make a Titanic 2.
That's true.
Not the same people. So all this to say, what I was getting to is, should they have called Super Mario World Super Mario Brothers 4 in America? They did call it Super Mario Brothers 4 in Japan. Was it good branding to have, like, just the numbers go up? Or are we supposed to be on Super Mario Brothers 12 now? Like, was it smart of them to draw the line and just the trilogy is the NES games, and once they moved over to the Super Nintendo, it's like abandoned numerals?
I don't know. I feel like, it's on a new system. It's sort of starting something new. I guess you could also argue that it might confuse some consumers because we're all dumb. I don't know. It's just what I'm used to, so I don't find a problem with it. But I could see both being fine.
Yeah, I don't think this was a problem back then, or especially in this genre of video game. But I know, like, a lot of movies and stuff stop using numbers because they're afraid that audiences won't watch it because they're like, well, I haven't seen 1 through 11, so I'm not going to watch 12, Fast and Furious 12. So they stop using numbers. I don't think that like a lot of people were like, no, I got to understand the story and plot lines of Super Mario 4, so I got to go back and play 3. But I don't know, maybe it had something to do with it. Like the numbers maybe just made people think like, oh, I should play the other ones first.
Which you'd think that would make them want to do that, so that people would, if they're half a decade behind, just buy an NES as well, or just buy all stuff.
I mean, that could be true, but like also it's like if they're not buying new games, like if they're just like not buy, like if the NES is obsolete, which I know it wasn't by this time, but if it was, then it's like, if it's obsolete, they're like not gonna buy something from Nintendo. They're just not gonna buy it.
Right,
because they haven't played it.
All right, I'm changing my answer. I think they should have called it Super Mario Brothers Reckoning.
2 Super Mario Brothers 2 Furious.
Worse yet, you could imagine a situation where, maybe next year, Nintendo goes the path of Sega, where they went a really long gap between Sonic the Hedgehog 1, 2, 3, and then they were like, all right, it's time to make Sonic the Hedgehog 4. They made so many Sonic the Hedgehog games in between, but this was their time to cash in on the fact that they never went to 4. You could see a world where Nintendo does announce Super Mario Brothers 4, right? And it's like the biggest thing ever. It's like, oh my god, like they finally did it, even though they've already done it so many times. But now because it's the title of the game, it's like people are really excited. It's like, oh, they're calling it Super Mario Brothers 4.
It's like what they did with Crash Bandicoot. They made Crash 4 after there were like 11 other games after Crash 3.
I like to think that Nintendo is savvy enough to, look at what Sega did, or Team Sonic, or whoever the hell has control of this property. To look at what they did and realize, like, oh, we shouldn't do anything like that, because that whole IP is a mess.
We haven't lately talked about music on this podcast, but I feel like it's very easy to talk about music when it comes to Super Mario games in general, and Super Mario Brothers 3 has some amazing tracks on it that I mostly associate with like early YouTube, where people would play on like ragtime style pianos and do these tracks again, and I would listen to them that way. And I realize that's just like a weird sentence, but that's just like how classic these tunes are. And it's funny because Koji Kondo, who does all the music for the Super Mario games, he said he actually had a very difficult time coming up with the music for this game. Just not sure, how to match Super Mario Brothers 1. I called it 1, Joe. How to match Super Mario Brothers 1, or like just what kind of music it would call for. But I feel like personally, it's all very memorable music. I think it's called like the Athletic theme, one of them, which is like fantastic. Again, very old timey rag. Do 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 do. Like, come on, who doesn't love that?
Oh yeah, keep doing it.
Nah,
so
I'm sure I played it at some point in the episode.
Even the overworld map themes are all really like catchy and memorable. And then there's the one that's in a bunch of levels that's kind of like a beatboxy theme. They all sound great, and I give them credit for not just redoing the original Mario theme. So I feel like most games today would just be like, oh, this is our theme and it's iconic. Let's just do it again in like a little bit of a different way.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree that there's a lot of iconic music in this game, but it's just that really simple. When you're coming back down to earth after beating the boss, and you got that little arpeggiation, little twinkly noise, like that's still like that's what it's all about. It just makes you feel good.
For the record, I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure the athletic theme is world, right?
Yeah. Sorry, but what do they call? What do they call this one?
I don't know. I've never even thought about, like, I don't know if I ever knew the names of these.
Let's find out. Super Mario Brothers
tracks.
3 music. Gotta be
Rumba Sonata number 5.
Yeah. See, you could have been working with Kondo. He had no idea what to call these things. It just looks like it's called Overworld, which is different than like main theme. But I'm wrong. I'm stupid. I just love Super Mario World so much. I'm working it into this episode. Half these questions were about World.
That's true.
So we don't
You've
have to
got an
do that
agenda.
episode when it comes up.
You know what's funny? I did just start like playing a little bit of World because I'm like, I've never really played through it, so I do want to compare it sometime and really see where I land. But I have a hard time, even if I end up on like, oh, World is definitively better. I just think this one is just too connected to me for me to like any Mario game better than this one. But we'll see.
Well, you see, World's the better game because Super Mario Brothers 3 has 90 levels, but Super Mario World has 96 exits.
Exits.
Yeah, exits
Two
is
levels?
Exits is probably means that it has less levels.
Yeah. They're trying to use cheap tricks to make you think it's better. Speaking of worlds, what's everybody's favorite world in Super Mario Brothers 3? Do you have one?
I have two. Because I can't answer this question honestly, but like I think the Giant Land, I don't actually enjoy playing through it, but I think it's the most. I think it's the most like imaginative they got. Like that's a really cool idea, and so I appreciate it on that level. But I really do like, as I mentioned early on, I think even during my Essential Games List vote, I really like World 5, where first you start out on land and you're like, what? Only 3 levels? Like this is weird. And then you get to the part where it's like, nope, you're going up to the clouds, and then you're up in the clouds, and there's like a bunch of cloud-themed levels where lots of pitfalls and lots of like, ride these coasters while all these enemies do all this crazy shit to you. Not that like dying is fun or anything, but here we have like 2 creative themes in one world.
Yeah, I like that they all kind of tell their own story or just have a really unique theme. Since I was only really good enough to beat half this game, I will have to go with the big head mode levels because I just thought that, I didn't think that there was anything that could surprise me graphically on this system, but that did.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they had to design like alternate sprites for like everything for that world is kind of cool. I also did like the one you were talking about, Mike. Is that 6? No, it's 5.
Yeah.
With the clouds. I love that you have to go through like a specific dungeon and climb to the clouds. But my answer would probably be World 7, the pipe land.
I knew you were gonna say that,
funny.
and it's funny because that's my least favorite because I just don't like being challenged.
Well, because it's not even like they're challenging, but they're challenging in like, I think World 8 is like challenging in like you have to be really good at Mario. World 7's like challenging, like you gotta just think differently than you've been thinking. Like there's a vertical level, and then there's a level where like the pipes are like this maze where you have to like get to the inner, like the end of the level is like in the middle of the level. You gotta find your way to the center of this maze. Like I feel like each level in World 7 is like really innovative. So I love World 7.
No, you're actually right. Like it's very creative. It's the same reasons as like why Giant Land. Like I don't enjoy it that much, but it's very creative. Like same thing with Pipe Land. I would actually say World 6, Iceland, would be my least favorite. I'm just not a big fan of like the game is already pretty slippery enough, and then the ice adds to it, and it just causes a lot of like, thankfully there's power-ups all over this game, but it just causes a lot of like unfun moments where I lose my cool power-up and then have to go like play a little more carefully to find the next one. And yes, that's part of the game,
right.
So you get what you get. I'm just saying it.
It's allowed. You're allowed to not like that level.
It's
that world.
That world. And it's not like, look, it's not like there aren't good levels in that. It's just like a whole thing devoted to slippery landscapes is just not, I don't know, like I didn't need that when the game itself already has some good weight behind it.
Yeah, and I'll say about that world too, like this whole game looks so clean and so good, but the what they were trying to do by making it look like cold, I guess, is that the whole sky is these vertical white and blue stripes, which looks kind of weird in the first place, but then like when there's a coin on it which is rotating, it's just like a coin with like you can see the whole square outline of where the coin is sitting. Like it I think that breaks.
Yeah, the game's
like,
broken at that
the
point.
clean look.
Yeah,
not the game's broken, but the clean look of the game breaks for a little bit in that world.
Speaking of the game's broken, not that I'm going to, I'm not going to get into like the science or mathematics behind this, but everybody knows in Super Mario Brothers 3, there is like this scrolling feature of the game where like a little bit of information is like tucked in to the like the right side of the screen where the colors just look kind of weird as you're entering them, and there's like this weird effect where the clouds that were white, like when they enter in on the screen, they're green, and it's like, what's up with that? I watched a video on it, so I will link the video, and I think that is probably the better case here. But just for those who are interested, forget about what's going on the right side of the screen. What's more interesting is on the left side of the screen. Does anybody notice that there's actually, empty space on the left side of the screen that is a completely solid bar of the background color of the map? So if you're on a light blue background, the whole bar on the left side is light blue, and that's actually because it's masking the information that is being withheld on the sides, because technically the game is showing you, it's loading more information than it's showing you on the TV. So the masking there is to avoid, as it's scanning from side to side, the information that you're not supposed to be seeing. However, because of the way that the pixels work, there is a little bit on the right side that does show that they probably would have wanted to mask, but it just isn't possible because the amount of information being shown and all that. So what happens is the colors, not the actual objects, but the colors of what was on the area where it's being masked on the left side map over to the right side. And so that's why, like, if you saw a green warp pipe and then walked over and just loaded a part where there was a white cloud, that white cloud would be green because the green warp pipe on the left side is carrying over back to the right side. And so what is a really interesting graphical glitch is just like, which didn't bother me at all, but some people complain about that feature, is just something really interesting, where it's just things that they couldn't possibly have solved. Like, think about it. These are the guys who made the NES, and they couldn't figure out a workaround for it.
Yeah, I guess I did notice some artifacting. I guess I just thought it was, I guess it didn't have a solved solution. It was just a part of playing an NES game. But I'm glad to know that you did the homework.
Was that something that was visible on a CRT TV? Or is it just because now we're on, like flat screens?
I guess it depends, really. I don't know for certainty. I had it on my CRT, so I can't say, like, whether it's overscan or whatever that causes it. But it's a known thing. But I think, yeah, it would depend on like how, because it's a very small line on the right-hand side. So technically it's not even a full 8x8. And I think, what's more interesting, and it's probably more interesting that it took us almost 2 hours into the show to get to, we didn't talk about the fact that, unlike the original Super Mario Brothers, in this one, you can go left to right and re-explore land that you've already been to. A pretty nifty feature, because in Super Mario Brothers, the original, I'm trying not to say one, Joe, in the original, you couldn't do that. Once you had moved past the left side of the screen, you couldn't return to that left side area. Here, you can revisit the entire stage.
Honestly, that should have been on the back of the box.
Yeah, really. I used to honestly, like, I know you're joking, but like, I'm serious. Like, I used to be, when I would play Super Mario Brothers 1, I used to get aggravated by that so much. Maybe because I was so used to this game, but like, there are a lot of levels in this game that are designed because of that, that you couldn't have done in the first game because you can't go backwards.
But yet we don't have much to say about it because it's like we just kind of take that for granted these days. You know, like yeah, of course it lets you do that. Like it should.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you be able to? People can go in both directions, both of the existing directions.
Well said, Joe. That's what we were trying to tell people this whole episode is that
Yes.
life isn't just moving in one direction. You are
Yeah.
in control of your destiny.
Life is moving in two directions. Only.
Entropy is kind of technically only moving in one direction. So, and that's really the only dimension that matters. Like all other dimensions are kind of constructs.
What's your favorite dimension?
Z.
Yeah, we
Nice.
wouldn't exist without it.
But same with the other two.
To get back on track. Yeah, hold on, no, because I can do this. All jokes aside about dimensions and also just Mario's time machine and Mario is missing, which are probably joke games. We'll find out when we get there. This is it. Super Mario Brothers 3 is the final like Super Mario Brothers entry on the NES, and so in some ways, it's really sad for the show, right?
Yeah,
Like,
you don't really know how much of the actual like bones and structure of the show is tied to the essential games list being at the end.
Yeah, that's true.
I was being serious for a second. Think about it. Like we're kind of like Nintendo's kind of done in some regards. Like they put out their biggest hitter. Now it's like it's all like the Mario team is working on Super Mario World for a totally different system. They're abandoning us. People at the time didn't know that, right? When they were buying their NES games, like they were just starting with Super Mario Brothers 3 now. And yes, Nintendo's going to publish more games, but for what it's worth, like they're absolutely all invested on Super Nintendo and the like. And so Super Mario Brothers 3 isn't just the end of Super Mario Brothers on the NES or on this podcast for that matter. It's also just kind of the end of like, you know, it's like the most important game on the NES arguably, and it's here and it's gone, and hopefully people will still listen to this podcast now that this episode is over.
Yeah, my hope is that because like I suspect very, very, very strongly suspect that this is going to be the marked high point of like game quality, like you know, like technical quality that we play, and I mean obviously also game design. But my hope is that other games now, like we'll find other games that come somewhat even a little bit close to like this quality, like going forward, more and more of them because of this, that were inspired by this. My fear is that all those games are going to be on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah. Now, guys, you're really both just saying that it's all downhill from here, and we can't have that.
I mean, it could be argued that our better episodes are the bad games.
I'd say, I know an even better game that's on the horizon somewhere. I'm not going to say which episode it is, but when we get there, you'll know.
Okay.
Oh, I know.
Can't wait. I think I might too.
Speaking of episodes coming up, just to show that all hope isn't lost. Actually, next week we have Abadox, which is a game that I am familiar with on a weird scale, just because it's like alphabetically sorted. And at one point, I was just booting up old emulators and playing games in alphabetical order for like 5 minutes. So I have 5 minutes worth of Abadox information that I will share next week, and I'll probably play some more too to give even more insight. But then we have Adventures of Lolo 2. Adventures of Lolo is an essential game.
Wow,
So,
we're doing franchise mania right now.
Yeah, and Al Unser Jr.'s Turbo Racing.
Huh.
Perfect.
Sean, will you be able to tell us a lot about Al Unser Jr.?
Al Unser was actually really big into luge, and he started out just like working on cars, like on that thing that you go under the car with, like you lay down on it. And then he decided to race with it, and that's how luge started. And I don't think that has anything to do with the game. I don't think it's a real story, but
yeah, he was actually the developer. It had nothing to do with his racing ability. It's like Sid Meier's Pirates kind of thing.
The next major release we get from Nintendo on this console, I'm not counting, what is this game? Barker Bill's Trick Shooting? I'm not counting that. The next big game we get from them is Dr. Mario. So that episode airs in August 15th, 2025. So look
right around
forward
the
to
corner.
that. Yeah, look forward to that. I mean, we joke, but it's coming.
That's true.
2025 is here just as soon as 2032, just as soon as 3000.